Welcome back to Mindful Trinity viewers. So today we're actually joined by a very special guest. He's a spiritual leader, a spiritual activist, a teacher, and a practitioner of Bhakti Yoga. His name is Rathim Krishna Das. He's formerly from Durban in South Africa. In fact, my hometown in Durban. And now is actually in India. So we're going to be discussing the next dimension, a holistic perspective of reality. So welcome to Rathim Krishna Das. We are so grateful that you're here to share all of your insights and your knowledge with all of us.
Hi, Vaishnavi Charan.
You tell us more about Rathim Krishna Das and what led you on this path of being a monk, firstly, and also to share ancient wisdom.
Yes, well, I also ask myself that question, who is Rathim Krishna Das? Still trying to find the answer. Well, you know, there's a few honorifics that I have that people have been kind enough to bestow, and I'm grateful for that. But I think the personality and the person of who I am is summed up in probably the calling myself a seeker. Somebody who's trying to work with myself, trying to understand myself, trying to work with philosophy and knowledge, trying to assimilate. And I've found that the path that to traverse that is not so easy. It's never been easy, especially energy work and working from the inside, trying to understand oneself from that level is always going to be a little more challenging. I think the easier identity of recognizing oneself externally, that's not so challenging. It may be sometimes, but I think trying to understand oneself from the inside, that takes a little bit more effort, a little more energy. And I think that's why I've gone down the path of understanding this life in the best that I can. I've always been that kind of a person who's questioned myself and questioned reality, questioned the outside world. Unfortunately, I couldn't get much answers on my own because much of it didn't make sense in the way it looked and the way in the logic of it. And until I found the yoga philosophy that I currently subscribe to, and it comes from the Vedic tradition, and it's given me a sense of understanding, a sense of experiencing more than understanding.
So thank you so much for that. That was absolutely amazing to find out who you really are. Also, I know you actually been studying ancient wisdom, and you're also spreading this. You're sharing it with like-minded people across the world, in fact. Why would you say ancient wisdom is relevant in this day and age, this modern age?
That's a very good question, Vaishnavi Charan. You know, when I asked myself that question, one of the comforting answers that I resonated with is that humanity has kept ancient wisdom together for thousands of years. So surely it has value beyond the spectrum of time. The experience of time is limited to the experience of space. So time and space resonate because they give us a physical experience. But we know we also have a mental experience of life, and we usually live within that. Our ambitions and hopes for something in the future, and our regrets and fears for something in the past. So we can also live within that, which is not so positive, it's not so encouraging, but it's a fact that we can live within that. But what ancient wisdom does is gives us the essence of what it means to be humane, what it means to be a human being, and to experience and expound that sense of being. We have a sense of being, but in the bodies that we are now, the beingness is of human trend that has stimulated people on all different levels, because the nature of the exercise combines the body and the mind together. So when you have a synergy or a synthesis of body mind, then it's very easy to connect the soul level of the self to that. What happens in the secular world is that we have an experience of the body, and the mind is something we have to bring along. The mind is something we have to always be tuning into. And when it's disconnected from the experience of the body, what these ancient wisdoms tell us is a sense of coherence.
Why did you take up an interest in understanding energies of the human body, and how will that understanding help us in our lifestyle today?
Yes, wonderful question. I think you can appreciate that the lifestyle of a monk is a highly focused lifestyle, where energy is highly focused in a particular direction. If your energies are not focused and they are multi-branched, then naturally you're dispersing energy, and energy is a finite resource. You know, we don't have unlimited levels of energy, right? I'm sure at the end of the day, that's why as a symptom of fatigue, as a symptom of engagement, we're feeling exhausted, we're feeling depressed. So yeah, that was the study done by Dr. Masaru Emoto, where he showed the how the study of water was so remarkable and so connected, so coherent to the physical nature of the human being. And that was remarkable for me at that time, because you must remember in the early 20s, it's not so cosmopolitan. It's not more, the ethos was different then. Then it was more like taboo to be, reading and researching about metaphysical activities and metaphysical stuff. So, but today, the science behind it is really overwhelming, because what started off as Newtonian physics and the classical way of understanding the world has now developed into a science of quantum mechanics. Have you heard of this system of knowledge?
No.
Quantum mechanics?
But I'm always very eager to learn.
Okay. So it explains it in theory. It's fairly simple. It's that Newtonian physics explains the nature of the world on a physical level using the senses naturally. But quantum is the microscopic level. So the macro level is Newtonian physics, and the micro level, or even smaller than that, the nano level, is where the laws of quantum mechanics and the field and the system of quantum mechanics reside. And when you study that system of knowledge at that level, then it seems to explain the world in a very different way, and a way that doesn't cancel out probabilities. Probabilities means that the possibility or the potential for variegatedness is much more than in the Newtonian physics, because Newtonian physics means you assess with your senses and you get an outcome, and that must be repeatable. It's empiric. And for it to be repeatable, it must mean that everybody sees it the same way, right? So once we get that concept down, we've been studying the world for eternity in that way. But this new epistemology, level of study of knowledge, is explaining that when one observes the world, then you have a finite way of receiving information back. But when one is in a different state, in a wave state, so this was done as an experiment. What was done was called the double slit experiment, where they try to, in a very basic way, they try to shoot through electrons through two slits in a screen.
Okay.
And as they continue to do that, then naturally somebody has to be observing this, right? So that's the scientist.
Yes.
So they noted that when the scientist observed the electron going through the double split, then it only went through one gap, either the left side or the right side.
Okay.
But when the scientist did not observe and the camera was just rolling, then something very amazing happened. The electron actually went through both slits, kind of like spooky, as Einstein would call it.
Yeah.
Spooky action at a distance. So it's, how is that possible that something physical can go through two slits at the same time? It doesn't make sense. In the level or in the study from the Newtonian physics, it doesn't make sense because you can only go through one avenue at a time. But in terms of quantum mechanics, there is probability. And in that probability, that means the electron can choose or can be in any place at any one time. And as soon as the person observes where it is or in a direction, it manifests there.
Okay.
General state. So it's not in any specific field or circumstance.
Okay.
It's in a general experience that
Wow.
in the quantum state, if the person is not observing, then it gives you variables. And when you do observe, it only gives you one distinct outcome. So when Dr. Emoto assessed water, we know water as what? It's something that we drink, H2O, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, and the combination of that two gases gives water.
Yeah.
And it's a soluble, it's something, it's liquid state, and we drink to quench thirst. So it's a physical substance. So when you observe it, it's only one dimensional, it's physical.
Yeah.
But when Dr. Emoto studied it in using different systems of quantum mechanics, then he realized that there's other dimensions of water, like memory. He proved that water has memory, where they would put a bouquet of flowers into a vase. I'm sure we've done that many times. And when you remove the bouquet, the structure of the stems that were in the water, you can photograph that with a specific camera. And it gives you the shape of the bouquet that was in the water. So that shows the water molecules was retaining the shape of the bouquet of flowers, even when it was out of the vase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You know what? I was actually so like taken aback. My mind actually was like in awe when you mentioned about how the water basically, how it has memory.
Yeah, the book that Dr. Emoto wrote is called The Message of Water. You can read about it. I think I sent you some links on that. You can put it up for the listeners as well as a reference. So that study you're talking about is when he put rice into 3 different beakers of water, and to 1 beaker of rice in with water, he said, "Thank you very much." And he said sweet, loving words to that. And the next beaker of water, he said negative words to that. And the 3rd beaker of water with the rice, he ignored. And he did that for every day for, I think, up to 3 months. And gradually, what we found was that the rice that was in the water with the pleasant words, it became fragrant, it became clear, there was no rotting. It was actually very fragrant, wonderful. The rice that he spoke negative to became greenish, blackish, it decomposed. It actually started to rot. And the rice that it ignored was completely black. So he gathered from this that there is a transmission between humanness or feelings in the sense of feeling an emotion and projecting an emotion to water. And there's a correlation between that. There's a coherence. And this proved, I think why this is so significant is because the human body is made up of 70 to 80% water. And if that is so, and water is responding in this way to human emotion, then what are we transmitting from one human being to another? That became very profound.
Yeah.
And he's done many other studies with music and the effect of music onto water. And he's even done study of names of people, because people carry a certain frequency, a certain energy.
Yes.
And so naturally, if the bodies, and if human beings or the human body is 70 to 80% water, then by a certain transmission of feeling, of emotion, you can actually change the state of the other person.
It's so
Now, isn't that
amazing.
phenomenal?
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And also I think with me, because I'm actually all about self-love, self-care. And when you actually care about yourself and you love yourself, that's how you can also love another and give care to other people as well. So by you actually mentioning all of these different studies, yeah, with regards to the body being, with so much of water within us. So in order to actually only think about the next, you also need to think about yourself. And you have to be conscious, being aware, and offering those kind words to yourself, because sometimes unknowingly we're also so horrible to ourselves. And that is why we give out the same sort of emotion when it's like we're not aligned with our real self, our true self, becoming unconscious.
And that leads me to the second study that I wanted to mention. Is a study done by Dr. Joe Dispera. I've even sent a link on that. You can also put that up. And he's affiliated with an institute for Heart Math Institute, where they connect and they study the coherence between the heart and the brain.
Wow.
So if you remember at the beginning of the talk, I mentioned the correlation between motivation, thinking about something from the level of the mind, and feeling something from the level of the heart, how to connect the two. So when what you're talking about is very relevant to the modern world, because the levels of stress, the levels of tension that one goes through and one has to deal with on a mental level is remarkable. Therefore, as in the monastery, we have a practice where, because we joke that the stress can't go any more up, right? At the top of the head is the crown, so it can't go anymore. It has to then make a U-turn and come back down. You see, so the more stress you build up, as it grows and escalates right up to the top of the head, there's no way to go out of the body through the top. So then it U-turns and comes back down. And the first major organ that is connected to sensory level is the heart. So what Dr. Joe was describing is that in the heart tissue, the cardiac tissue of the heart, there's 40,000 neurons. And we know where neurons found. They're found in the brain. So we only know of neurons in the brain, but there's 40,000 neurons found in the heart. That means then there's a intuitive correlation or coherence between the heart and the brain that modern science has not connected yet. But quantum mechanics does account for this. It does in the field of quantum healing. It does account for understanding the coherence between the heart and the brain, because the brain is the execution center, but the heart is the center where feeling is generated. So although you're experiencing depression, but you're feeling the depression in the heart. When you feel fear, you feel it, the palpitation of the heart.
Yeah.
So in trying to study these deeper, stronger emotions like fear, love, gratitude. So some are negative, some are positive. So much of our meditation study at the monastery is based on assessing these powerful emotions, because energy is energy in motion. So when you correlate the both, you have to synthesize the heart as part of decision making as well. If you're trying to motivate yourself from a state of depression, if you're only doing it through the clinical approach, that everything is happening up here, you're neglecting a major part of intuitive experience, which is the heart. And we know that a mother would use the experience of intuition more to deal with an anomaly with her child, something she doesn't understand what's going on, why the child is in this way, sick or something. She'll use intuition more than reason.
Yeah. So, okay, we know that practicing this is actually very important, but do you have any practical ways on how our audience can actually implement this into their life?
Yes, I'm all for being pragmatic, because that was the idea of taking up to a practice in a serious way, like the monastery.
Yeah.
So what would philosophy be without an experience? So naturally, if we're assessing ourselves, one of the first things to understand is we got to know our mind. This is one of the first things they teach us in the monastery over this past 20, 25 years. Even up to now, we can never say we've mastered the mind, but we can say we've made the mind our friend. So the first level of mastery or self-mastery is to understand that the mind is an independent entity to experience if it is not trained. It will act in its own way. It will give out thoughts and experiences and expressions in its own way. Why? Because we rooted still in the survival mechanism of the body.
True.
So the body is designed to survive, right? And everything about the body, the senses are all tuned in for survival and for generation. How to pass on my genes to the next generation and how to survive while doing that. That is the first level of identity, that of the body. But the mind is not naturally, it's not by nature in tune with that. It takes the experiences of what was good, the best choices that you've made, and it takes the experiences of the bad experiences that you've had. And it's constantly assessing to find homeostasis, to find balance. Now we see that with the body, right? The body works most optimally when it's in homeostasis. Biology tells us this, right? Don't we recognize that the mind also needs homeostasis or balance? Okay, so the first level is that this is what they teach us in the monasteries. You want to know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is what they teach us, to first understand and master your body. And that is what yoga does. The exercises, the breathing, the correlation between breathing and exercise, the coherence between the lungs, the breathing, and the heart. So once that physical level of mastery is achieved to a certain degree, then the next level of mastery is the software, the mind. And once you've acknowledged that it's running a program, but whose program is that? It's what school education system has indoctrinated us to do. It's what the tertiary level has indoctrinated us to do. And much of that education, it's education but it's based on more on skill set rather than understanding the process of life.
Very true.
I remember in school, maybe it's a little archaic right now, but we had half an hour or 15 minutes before the lessons could start for right living. That was the life process education class in school. And the rest of the school syllabus was meant to train us how to become a worker, how to develop a skill set so that you can get a job and carry on with life. It never gave us the opportunity to think outside the box. That's why it's so wonderful that a community, and I'm commending what you do and what your listeners do to create platforms and forums where people can talk like this, where they can share and exchange like this, because this is true education.
Thank you.
This is education. What you learn in school is a skill set to become an engineer, to become a lawyer, to become a doctor. It's a skill set. And a skill set is not a process of life. It's one of the attributes that facilitate life, but it's not the process of life. And more so, if monetary gain is added to the philosophy, that you'll have a higher earnings, you'll have much more remuneration from your skill set, then forget about the process of life. Even all your ethics will go outside the door.
Very true. Yeah,
Yes.
I think with me, whilst growing up, we always saw people that we love go through so much of challenges, whether it may be due to finances, but we never understood it because we thought that was the norm. And we wasn't even prepared for this challenge, for these challenges when we became adults, because our families, our parents tried to protect us. They didn't want us to know what they were going through. But now that we're adults, and I actually wish that I was trained like that when I was little, so I would know what the future would be like. I mean, none of us can plan for the future, because when you're planning for the future, okay, yes, we do plan for the future. We set goals and all of that, but we cannot be living in the future. We have to live in the present. We have to be in the moment, and we cannot live in the past either. But I mean, if children are actually, trained a certain way when there are challenges, say for instance, a child falls, the parents are there to actually, comfort the child, because they don't want anything to hurt anyone, to hurt anything to hurt the child. But they don't realize when the child, the more the child falls, the more the child will learn and become stronger. So we can't really protect the child all the time. I think I actually heard this by another teacher many years ago, or maybe I actually read a quote, I'm not quite sure. But I think it was a zebra or no, it was actually a giraffe. When the giraffe mother gives birth, as soon as the child actually, is born, the mother kicks the child. And the child gets up and she kicks the child again, over and over again, because she wants the child to be strong. So when the other animals will come, run for the child, will come to eat the child or whatever, the child is strong enough and it can run and fend for himself.
I like the points you mentioned about being mindful in the present. And I think that's, I'm just relating or correlating to the name of your program, Mindfulness, right? Trinity. Yeah. So mindful is a sense of being in the present, but a little more than that is being in the present continuous.
Yes.
Because the idea of continuous, it's like an adverb. It kind of gives you the feeling of being a little bit more in the present and a little bit more in the past. Both these time dimensions can be related to in the present, continuous. Yeah. And you mentioned this about children, and it's very, very apt that a child actually unlearns this. It doesn't learn this because children by their nature, do you see how they can make a game out of anything? Yeah. Why is that? Because they are in the present. A child is so happy because they're experiencing in the present. When they're with their friends and they're playing, there's nothing there. They're making make-believe games.
Yeah.
But because they are so mindful, they are so present, they're experiencing and it's natural. It's not something we have unlearned this. We have actually unlearned this as adults. Maybe children can teach us something, you know.
True. Very true.
And that's why a child can be happy in any situation. If they're with their friends, they can make a game out of anything. Why is that? Because by nature, we relate to that aspect of ourselves. But once we've become indoctrinated to think in a certain way, to relate and be in a certain way, then that natural resonance is lost.
Absolutely.
We've lost it. Therefore, as part of the training that we go through in the monastery as well, is to become mindful. To means to become familiar with. You can project in the future and you can reminisce about the past, but you can only meditate if you're in the present continuous.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, yeah.
How long have you been practicing this holistic lifestyle? I know you said you've been 25 years in India, but
yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, the curiosity for it has always been there, but I joined the practice in '95, and the inspiration I got came from yoga philosophy, and it's interesting. I say this yoga philosophy because yoga is a big thing in the world today, right? It's done by everyone. And slowly, if you see, yoga philosophy is also becoming a little more people are starting to inquire a little more about it. The philosophy of yoga is important to have the mind-body connection. The yoga alone only gives you the body connection. But without the philosophy of the yoga, you don't have the mind connection. And if you don't have the mind-body connection resting on the intuitive self, that is the complete picture. It must rest on the intuitive self. That means the knowledge, the experience that you're having must be connected to intuitive knowledge rather than just rational, logical knowledge, you know, which comes by intellection, by logical reasoning. So we depend a lot on that.
Okay.
And the idea with motivation or trying to assess clinical aspects of depression is that we try to reason it. We try to find the solution in reasoning it. Maybe I'm not doing something right. Maybe I'm, you know, if I could adjust my lifestyle a little bit or something like that. We never connected to intuition.
Okay. And
we never connected inward.
Yeah. So what would you say? How has this practice helped you in your journey?
Yes. So it's firstly given me an idea to understand myself at 3 different levels. Mindful Trinity, the level of the intuitive self, which is the foundation, the level of the mind, and then the level of the body. So, but like I'm saying, just reasoning doesn't work. And that's why motivation doesn't last. We need inspiration. There's a difference between motivation and inspiration. So motivation is good for the moment. It's like the jet fuel. But to sustain it, you need to transform it into a lifestyle. That's why I was saying I would not necessarily call myself a monk, because for me, it's a lifestyle now. Actually, this is one of the hard questions of life that scientists are dealing with. What is consciousness? And yet, if you don't understand what is consciousness, how do you assess how to relate in the world? Because you are a conscious being. So I think, let's give a little credit to religiosity and spirituality that they've tried to explain it, but they've brought in too much of ritual. And when you bring in too much of ritual, then you create a separate, you kind of move away from the process, and now you start following in as a culture. Therefore, you have so many, we started speaking about ancient traditions. So there's so many ancient traditions, but if you look at their principles, they all are united. They are coherent in their principles. But if you look at their cultures, you're going to find a lot of variegatedness.
Sure.
So this is the tendency of wanting to belong. So we want to belong with the same identity. Now, you must remember, as I initially started speaking about, that if we go down to the smaller scales, from the body to the organs, to the cells, to the molecules, to the atoms, and then right down, we're going down the scale, then we're moving less away from physical. You agree with me?
Yes, I do. Yes.
But we're still existing. You agree with that?
Yeah, we are existing.
Yes, because we're observing, right? We're observing that we're moving lower and lower down, lower orders of magnitude. So as we're coming lower, there is one thing that's always there, and that's the observer. I'm able to exist, I'm able to observe, and that's because I'm conscious.
Okay.
So if we move away from physical reality just for a moment, and that's meditation. Meditation gives us an opportunity to move away from the physical reality just for a moment.
Okay.
And
Makes
by
sense.
practicing and feeling what that is like in a natural way, feeling that natural experience of that, because we've lost contact with that. We got to literally think about it, resonate with it, and then get into it. But by nature, everybody has that inner connection.
Yeah, that's
so.
very true.
So my suggestion is try to move away from the physical self a little bit, from the physical to the mental. Try to connect with that intuitive self that I've been talking about, and just a little bit. Just try to find that person there. Just try to find that entity that is who is observing, that is who is watching everything, who is computing everything, and who is experiencing everything.
Yeah,
And I think where monks, monks got a good reputation.
They do.
And what
That's
is
true.
that? They're known as good-natured people. They're known as people who've controlled aspects of their nature, like anger, like depression, like, the things that so-called ordinary people have difficulty with. It's a given. It's expected that the monk has mastered those. But why has he done that? It's what you are seeing and experiencing as when you meet somebody like a monk is the symptoms of where he's situated and what is his state. What is his inner state? Because if his inner state is connected at the right level, then it will become effervescent, and it will come up higher till it reaches molecules, atoms, higher till it manifests at the physical level.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, but now I'm just trying to understand. For
Yes.
the monks, it's actually, this lifestyle is actually quite easy because it's the way of life. It's your lifestyle now.
Correct.
But for the normal, the normal person, like how you actually just mentioned, the person that's going to work every day, 9-to-5 job, and whether it's even housewives, people that's actually at home, but they're not living in a monastery. How can they implement this lifestyle without actually moving into the temple?
Very relevant question. Yes. So this is the study I was talking about of Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he's shown that you don't have to be anything externally. You don't have to be that, because it's an internal adjustment, right? It's not external. I may have a shaved head, but hey, enlightenment. The garb doesn't give me the experience. It facilitates it, but the work has to be done on the inside. So his studies have shown, and it's a very practical study, that anybody who learns, and this is the Institute of Heart Math, HEARTMATH, Heart Math Institute. So it's a scientific institute, and they show how if you learn how to correlate your heart, the resonance from your intuitive self, your spiritual heart, if you learn the intuitive way of connecting that to the brain and that link that I was telling you about, the 40,000 neurons in the heart, and connecting that to the brain, if you learn how to do that, then you can achieve what a monk achieves as enlightenment.
Okay, but
you can achieve the same experience, because all that is different is that he's putting in the work.
Okay, but how can they implement this? I mean, how can they practice it? What practical ways can they utilize?
So firstly, remember that to control any aspect of the body, you got to connect to something that is conscious. So what in your experience of the body is conscious? There's two things. One is your breathing, and the other is your heartbeat, isn't it?
Yeah.
These two things signify vitality. If those two things are not there, then it's flatline. If you learn how to master your breathing, we call this pranayama, or the breathing process. And this is what even the science is telling today. As I mentioned, the Heart Math Institute, they're showing the correlation between breathing and the heart resonance. And if you learn how to connect, the heart is an organ of feeling. So and this is Dr. Emoto's study as well, that he found towards the end of his presentation, he said that there are two things that change the constitution of water the most rapidly, and that is love and gratitude. Love and gratitude. These two energies change water almost instantly. And remember, the human body is 70 to 80% water. So if you want to change your state, if you are in a state of depression or you have a lot of mental anxiety, I can give you one quick trick that monks do.
Okay.
It's a little austere, but it does the trick.
Okay.
Immediately have a cold shower. Ooh.
I can already feel the cold.
You can already feel it. Well, you'll also already feel the difference.
Yeah.
Because it's a reset button for the body. What happens when you go into cold water? Your breath changes. You take in,
yes.
Yeah. Immediately
yeah.
your breath changes.
I know. It's also does very good for the nerves, especially on the spine.
Every aspect of the body.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm bringing this point in to show you that if your heart and your breath and the brain, those three things are in coherence, then this unleashes the natural healing mechanism of the body. If you get cut, do you heal yourself? Who heals your body? Your body has an intelligence of how to heal itself.
That's true.
We've seen that practically.
Yes, that's true.
So that is healing on the outside that you're familiar with. What about healing on the inside? By correlating these three of gratitude, of learning how to breathe in proper resonance of natural coherence, and connecting the brain to an attitude of gratitude.
That's so true.
And this is a fundamental thing. These three things is my takeaway message for today. That if you can connect this and have an experience with that, you are living the mental state of a monk. You are living in that state that we train years to experience, because it takes a lot of training to be able to correlate that, especially coming out of the outside world.
That's true.
But what Dr. Joe is showing is that it's very pragmatic. It's so practical. The most powerful thing is the state of the heart, which is gratitude. And I just want to spend 1 minute on this. Why gratitude? Because to feel gratitude is a feeling that something good has been done to you. That's when you feel appreciation or gratitude, right?
Very sure.
Yes. So automatically you have received something first. You see, you're not empty anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're in the state of depression, you empty. You have nothing to hold on to. When you're in a state of gratitude, you have something to hold on to. And when you receive something first, the natural human instinct is to also give.
That's very true. Yeah, I think with me, I know I feel better when I'm giving, and I think that's actually one of the that I think it is one of the 6 loving exchanges, to give and to receive. It's balance, you know. Would you say that living an holistic lifestyle is an alternative form of healing and medicine?
Oh, wow, you hit it on the head. Most certainly, most certainly. Because unless you're holistic, like we were saying, if you're just living on the bodily level, then you're living in this survival mode. If you're just living in the mental level, then you just mental energy. You're just using either jumping for hope in the future or for fear in the past.
Yeah.
And you're living in those two worlds, you're not experiencing the present continuous.
Okay.
So if you live holistically, starting from your intuitive self, then you have a 3-system correlation, the Trinity that we spoke about. And it's a mindful Trinity. Yeah. It's something that you can only experience if you're in the present. Only if you're in the present, if you're mindful, can you correlate those 3. Okay. Unless, of course, after you reach advanced stages of mastery, it's second nature, but that's already a lifestyle. But where we are, we want small, simple steps. Okay. Triple X, small, simple steps. And the first thing to know is that unless I feel whole, unless I feel connected to natural energies, and that's why the earth, you know, we know this. When we go on holidays, where do you go? You go to a place where the ocean is there. You go to a place where you can go into the mountains. Nature. You go to a, so that's a little proud of me there, because somebody has taught me this. So how can I call it mine?
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, all of us are learning and we're teaching at the same time.
And this is the process of experiencing. It's through learning. Yeah. So one of the qualities that distinguishes a monk is humility. And why is that? Is because he's seeing that I've learned so much from nature. I've learned so much from others. I've learned so much from my own practice. How can I be proud about anything?
True. Okay.
Yes. So learning, the more you know, automatically the more humble you become. So very valid questions. How does one live one's lifestyle? How does these things affect one's lifestyle? So practically, one of the things that I do immediately is the breathing exercise. And this is very common also in the Western world by a person called Wim Hof. He's called the Iceman, who through breathing, he was able to stay underwater in frozen lakes and things like that. He's given a very wonderful practice of breathing. Okay. And it's something that, although we have our own traditional breathing exercises, but it's something I found to be very pragmatic, very powerful for my experience. So that's the first thing that I do, is to resonate my breathing, to correlate it, where there's coherence with nature, where I feel at peace, where I feel rested, I feel calm, I'm relaxed. So take a look at that. So that's the first one, is the experience, is my breathing practice. The second thing as part of my everyday practice is mindfulness. So to be mindful, because if I'm not mindful, then my energies get into the different modes of nature that are prevalent through the day. So naturally, in the yoga philosophy, it describes 3 modes of nature. that are prevalent throughout the day: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, you can't always be in passion because it takes a lot of energy to be there. And you can't always be in goodness, although you'd like to, because other modes also become dominant. And you can't always be in ignorance because you'll never get up from sleep. The balance of the three modes. So I'm very mindful of my energies. And as part of the lifestyle and the culture that I live, I have to be very acutely mindful of my energies, because just a moment of inattention and it can easily slip into another mode or slip into a past nostalgia. It's not always serendipity, Sometimes those things happen where you have a good experience, but it's also the reminiscing of the past that comes up very strongly. So you have to be mindful and immediately bring yourself into the present. So second practice I do is mindfulness. And a third practice is one of assessment. Let me call it assessment, where I'm focusing my energy into the heart center, which is in the middle of your chest. And when you focus your energy there, then you are tapping into the source center that animates this whole body. So everything about this body is coming from that one point. And everything that is functioning of this body is coming from that one point. So if you can tap into that and develop coherence with that, and learn to synergize that with your breathing and your brain function, you are living in a really good state of balance. So three things I've shared with you that you can do is to give a little time into the physical practice of yoga to keep the body in tune, and then a little yoga philosophy to keep the mind in tune, and then correlate that with, we were speaking about pranayama and energy, but in the human state, we assimilate energy from, we get nourishment from food. Food in itself has to be ingested and digested in order to release energy. So it's quite a process that the body goes through. It's quite an intense process. And beyond that, if the food quality is not good, then you're not guaranteed a higher output of energy. So therefore, diet is very important. The food that you eat, in the Vedic, in the yoga tradition, it's called prana. And the process, prana is the energy force, the vitality. It's the vitality that is latent within food that is ingested. And accordingly, it will release certain amounts of energy. So the correlation of all of that is very important. If you can assess those things, if you can give that a bit of thought and develop it as a process, then you'll be experiencing life in a very different way.
Okay, I like
because
that.
Because now you're in the present, and it takes quite a lot to keep yourself in the present. That's why monks meditate, because it's the process to keep you in the present. And when they are in tune with that, then they can master that to the point where they can relate and still be in the present. Because the way the mind is tuned, it's always anticipating the future and reminiscing about the past.
Okay.
So if you're living in either of those two worlds, you're missing the present.
True.
And it's so significant. It's so significant that even when you're looking at something, you're looking with those eyes. That on the landscape of life, you're looking, if you are in tune with money, you're going to see what can produce money out there. You're looking with that eye. And you're going to miss the rest of reality, which means the rest of life as a process. So when you tune your mind because of monetary remuneration to only look for these things, which are like hotspots, then you're going to miss a major part of the painting or the landscape of life as it's been given to you as a gift.
What are one or two pivotal moments that have shaped you thus far?
I think one of the things that I've learned from the monastery also is that to expand the idea of gratitude, to become a spiritual cosmonaut, to expand your consciousness greater than myself, because usually if I'm just focused my consciousness on myself, I develop more of a narcissistic, narcissism, rather than an idea of harmony or coherence or community. So when I expand my consciousness further than just my physical self, to community, and then to becoming an earthling on this planet, that global consciousness. And then the yoga philosophy teaches you cosmic consciousness, where you are, because we are correlated to the bodies that are there in the universe. The moon has a direct effect on us. The sun has a direct effect on us. And the scientific studies shown that explosions or flares on the sun affect human consciousness here on the earth.
Wow.
Yes. And of course, we know how the moon affects us, right?
Oh, yes.
On a full moon day, you get people becoming lunatic.
True.
Yes. So these bodies have an influence on us. So as a living being, my experience is not, I've restricted myself only to the human being, not to a living being. And the more I can expand myself out of that closet of just being only a human being, because what it means to be human today comes with a lot of connotations which are not so good. Nobody, if you ask any species, don't wait for their reply. Yeah, we don't have such a good for the other earthlings on this planet. We have a higher level of responsibility. So my experience or some of the profound moments would have been when in discussions like this, when the penny drops, when somebody catches on to one of the ideas that we shared, and you've done that, I don't know, so many times just in this one podcast, where things like say, oh, that's good, it makes sense, I resonate with that. And why is that so? Because we speak in the language of the heart. In the yogic philosophy, we are even grateful for the bacteria in the stomach, because if it wasn't for those guys, my food wouldn't be digested. We're even grateful for the bees, because if it wasn't for those guys, the plants wouldn't be pollinated, you won't get any food. Even grateful for the trees, because if it wasn't for those guys, what is the value of my lungs if they don't give out oxygen? You're living now as the philosophy of yoga is teaching, or as a yogi, you're living a very expansive, very from your inner core, you're expanding your consciousness so high and so profound that the frequency of that is having an effect in the world and in the community. And it's a positive effect, because it's inspiring, it's giving positive energy, and it's resonating with the earth's frequency. And yet it's not something that you aiming for. It's just a symptom of being in coherence, to be coherent with nature, to be natural, to be connected from heart, mind, and body. Does that make sense?
It's absolutely wonderful. Everything. I mean, I'm just so grateful to you. Like you mentioned, you are so grateful for all these things that nature actually has to offer us. I think just like you, I'm also grateful for all of these wonderful things. And I'm also very grateful for you for coming onto this platform to share all of your knowledge and your insights with us. And you have a wealth of knowledge. And yeah, it was just so amazing for me that 1 hour, but I think we actually went over that 1 hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you're having fun, time
Yeah,
flies.
exactly. So what
But
advice do you have, or can you give my audience or my listeners? Because now we're actually on YouTube and on the different podcast channels.
yes, well, I wouldn't like to advise, but I'd like to share.
Okay.
And firstly, I'm also very honored and with deep humility. I'm grateful for all those who have uh, shared their knowledge and wisdom with me. You know, this is a sign of what I'd like to call altruism, to be altruistic, to reach out to people in a sense of well-being. So usually altruism is described as philanthropy or trying to reach out in terms of food and clothing to people. But what about well-being? So I do my connection is spiritual or altruism from the level of intuitive self. That I feel by me being the best that I can be, then I resonate or I emit a certain frequency out to the universe. And people out there, there's somebody out there who's waiting for that kind of frequency. And there are many out there. That's why we have a whole fellowship now. And we have a whole family now, right? I'm sure all your listeners are like your family. And that is what and that's coherence for me. That's where the hearts are connecting beyond any other limitation. Every other aspect of our body, our mind are all limited. But at the level of intuition, at the level of who we are, the soul, there's no limitation there. We are unlimited at that platform. So when we connect at that platform, we can also resonate and generate a very powerful frequency out to the world. And that frequency creates harmony. It creates all the goodness that we want to experience as human beings. So in that way, we are reaching out to even people that we may not know by name, but we connect with by heart. So for me, that's very profound. And I'd like to encourage your listeners also, because I'm sure on the platforms that they have, they are also leaders or martyrs of ancient wisdom. They are also carriers of wisdom and knowledge that they can share with us. And when the idea of sharing comes along, when we develop the consciousness of sharing, of giving, then we get more. And I think that's something that you described. So when we feel gratitude more, and that's one of the most powerful energies you can connect to. Dr. Emoto said that in his findings. He described love and gratitude change water the quickest. So if you can develop these two things as a takeaway for today's podcast, and just resonate with it, just contemplate it, keep it in the mind, think about it, and then apply it to your intuitive self. That because when you feel gratitude, you feel whole. There's wholesomeness. There's no lacking.
Sure.
You cannot lack if you feel gratitude, because already I'm thankful. That means I've received something already.
Absolutely.
So you have a stronger platform on which to build alternative dimensions of your current reality, of which you only seeing yourself as physical right now. So the less we become physical and the more we can become intuitive to our own self, this is nothing supernatural. It's lower orders of magnitude that we were discussing. The more you can become in tune with that, the more you understand yourself and your true nature. And once that clicks, you can connect to the whole world and resonate with the whole world in the way you want to experience it, in the way you want to do it, with love, joy, gratitude, all these wonderful qualities that everybody wants to feel. And the greatest result of that is that you will feel fulfilled. You will become satisfied.
Wow. I don't have any words. I think you actually took all of my words. I'm feeling so much of gratitude for you. I'm absolutely grateful for everything that you that actually came out of your mouth this morning. It was just flowing with, how could I say, nectar, because nectar is actually absolutely beautiful and you want more of it. And I wish we actually had more time to do more of that, because it was so knowledgeable for me, and to implement it into my own lifestyle and my audience. I'm sure they're also looking forward to implement it and try this out. Everything was just so amazing for me. I'm feeling so much of love, so much of gratitude for you. I'm actually rambling here because that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling so much of gratitude, and thank you so much for coming on here and sharing all of that with all of us. Yeah.
It was an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I would just like to end by saying, if you'll accept my humble blessings, but not that I can bless, but my sentiment of goodwill and love and share and care and gratitude to all your listeners and the whole community, the whole family out there that you're building. Well done to you, and keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So to our listeners and to our viewers, thank you so much for listening in today. And if this podcast resonated with you, please do subscribe and share it with all like-minded people. Like Rathim Krishna Das mentioned, we're building a community, building a family. And with family, we actually have a strong support structure, and we can conquer the world. We start with ourselves first, and that's what we're doing. Yes, and please share it and invite all of them to actually be part of this family. Thank you once again, and I will see you on the next podcast. Bye-bye.